That was the first time I realised there are some people who don't deserve to have the liberty that we have every day, and probably permanently don't deserve to have that liberty. But before Morcombe, I would have probably marched in the street saying, he's done his time, let him out.
Welcome to the Success Times Happiness podcast, a platform dedicated to engaging discussions with inspiring individuals aimed at nurturing personal development. I'm Richard Thompson, your host, a father, entrepreneur, world champion Ultraman, and passionate about all things high performance. Our mission is to empower both ourselves and you to unlocking our fullest potential, recognizing that this life is no dress rehearsal. While I may not have all the answers, this show serves as our collective journey to uncover them. Today, we sit down with Peter Boyce OAM, a veteran lawyer and community leader with over 4 decades of experience in the legal field. Peter's work is defined not only by his incredible dedication to justice, but also his tireless commitment to giving back through pro bono efforts. From his involvement to high-profile cases like Daniel Morcombe to his mentorship of young lawyers, Peter exemplifies a life of service and moral conviction. His journey is an inspiring testament to hard work, resilience, and a deep commitment to making a difference. Expect to learn how Peter's upbringing and early career shaped his strong work ethic and sense of justice, the role of pro bono work in his legal career, with specifics about the Morcombe case, and key lessons from balancing high-profile legal cases with personal and professional integrity. All right, let's dive into this insightful and heartfelt conversation. Peter Boyce, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for coming on.
Hopefully I'll be still saying that.
Over 4 decades as a lawyer, how do you reflect on that?
I think I've been lucky. I do. Had some great opportunities and great things have happened to me that I never expected would happen. And they don't just come to you, I know that, and you've got to work. But I've had some great things come and go through my door.
Things that you didn't expect when you started the career?
I didn't really know what to expect when I started. I just knew I needed to get a job because we were on the farm at Felton, and
outside of Toowoomba.
Yeah, and there wasn't enough room for me to stay on the farm because one of my brothers was with his family was already working there and had worked for mum and dad for years. And
was that a conversation or
no?
Just sort of felt that.
I just knew, and farming was pretty tough going for him, so I knew that there was no room. And one of my other brothers, who some years earlier had come home and started to grow some crops for mum and dad, as well as them continuing the main parts of their business. He had a go at it, had the best crops out. Frost came and wiped them out overnight, so he suffered the same fate. He had to leave, and not that he begrudged leaving, he had to leave because the reality was there wasn't enough income.
Were you educated out there in terms of secondary schooling?
No.
Okay.
We all went to Woodlawn College in Lismore. The 6 boys all traipsed down to Lismore, and luck would have it. We only went there because Michael, who was the eldest, he went there because Mum's, I think, first cousin or second cousin was the principal, and he was a Morris father, and you wouldn't believe it. Paul and I copped the same treatment. He was the principal, and for the last 6 years we were there. That wasn't too good some days.
You boarded there?
Yep.
Yeah. With all the siblings.
Well, Terry was there at the same time, but all the other, everyone else went.
Gone through that same process.
Yep.
At what point in that process did you think, well, if I'm not going to be a farmhand and take over that side of the world?
I probably hadn't worked out what I wanted to do, frankly. Despite my looks now, I started off in the 4-stone 7s at Woodlawn. I was fairly small, and we had a great love of horses and racing, and to this day, I say if I was small enough, I'd have been a jockey. But that was never to be. And my brother had a son who was a jockey in later years. As much as he rode for a number of years, he had to give up because he couldn't continue to make the weights.
And so when did law come into your mind or into your sphere?
Probably the day the results came out from the HSC, which was in January of the year I finished, and I forget, it was 71 or 72, I think. Queensland was, their results had come out earlier, so New South Wales was later at that time, and thought, better go and find a job. So that's what I did. Went to Brisbane, walked the streets for 3 days, just door knocked on legal firms, and I mean, you look back now on how green you were. Like I told one firm, I think I got a job offer coming from this firm I've just been to, or they'd indicated they were going to give me a job offer, and I told the prospective firm, and you think, how silly is that? But that's what happened.
But why law?
I think I thought that I could have a go at it and maybe have a go at helping people in a way. And my brother was doing law and he seemed to like it, so I thought, oh, well, I might give it a bash.
From the time that, I mean, I worked for you and all the times that I've known you, your work ethic, I don't think I've come across too many others in my path that would come close to it. Where does that come from? Is that from farm days? Is that mum and dad? You're taking that from mum and dad? Or?
Yeah, mum and dad worked really hard, so much so that I know that when they had 3 boys at boarding school, they couldn't afford that, and they went to the school, and for some years after, they were still paying our fees off. They worked as hard as they could. They also told us that if you're going to have a go at something, you need to get into it. You don't need to go into it half-hearted. You need to get into it. So we did.
Did you know that the financial position at the time, or only after the fact? Because that's incredible to be able to put education so high.
Yeah.
To say, no, we'll take a debt on this and pay it off.
And they did it really tough, I tell you. If I didn't know when I finished school, it wasn't long after.
Yeah, okay.
And I never knew the size of the debt, and still don't.
Right.
But it would have been significant if you
small.
take 3 boys. And, you know, it mightn't sound much now, whatever it was, but it was a lot of money then.
Enough to having to take years to pay it off after the fact.
Yeah. But, you know, they religiously paid it off. And they had a good name because they had obviously sent 6 of us through, which is a lot of money.
How was those first few months in Brisbane?
Well, I think the firm I worked for was King & Company, and they were the 4th largest firm in the city.
Okay.
I think we had 94 on the staff.
Wow.
13 article clerks, of which 6 were doing the board course, which I did, which was full-time, and 7 were from uni. After they'd done their 3 years, they'd do 2 years articles.
Was it old school back then in terms of you worked 1,000 hours a week?
Not like I did once I got into Butler McDermott and ran my own firm. But I'm sure they thought, who do they have here? Not the employers or the partners, but the staff who I didn't know Brisbane at all, and they'd have to draw mud maps for me of you've got to go on delivery here. And
country kid from Lismore.
Yeah, I'm sure they thought, Jesus, where does he come from?
So what's the gap between the Brisbane work and finding yourself at Nambour?
Well, we ended up being the firm that did the agency work for Butler McDermott.
Oh, yeah.
I became aware of the fact that Richard Keller, who was a partner there, he was interested in selling out and going to the bar. I got to know that. I'm not sure how I got to know it, but I did.
How old are you here at this time?
22. So I thought, I might as well throw my hat in the ring. And in fact, I had an offer of a junior partnership at King & Co., an offer of a equal partnership with another firm in the city, an offer of partnership at Butler McDermott in the end. And I got an accountant to look at all 3 figures, and he said, you need to go to Nambour.
Wow.
So I did.
And had you been to the coast?
Oh, not very often, but a bit.
Okay.
Yeah.
But not living there or?
No. And probably no burning desire to live there.
Wow.
I was happy enough in Brisbane. And
you took the sole word of the accountant saying that's a better deal.
Yeah, and he was pretty clear about the deal.
Reasons why.
Yeah. Mind you, the King & Company was going through a pretty rough time in terms of their partnership, and one of my mates had taken a junior partnership there.
Right.
And he said to me, when I got offered it, he said, don't come in here, whatever you do.
It's a bit messy.
Yeah, and I think the junior partners were doing all the work and seniors were having great days at lunch, and that sort of stuff. And that's back when lunches were deductible as part of your business expense, and if you took a client or so. But it was a good firm, and they were really good to me. They didn't do crime, but I seem to have got a bit of crime. And
when you were at King?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah. And that was probably one of the hardest things I found to give up when I left there. I was just starting to make my way. And
what drew you to that? Because being a defence lawyer, obviously, working in crime, you're representing, I think, the general listener or the general population was like, really? Yeah. You're representing the, inverted commas, the baddies.
Yeah.
What drew you to that?
So some people aren't really the baddies, you know. Some have got a reason why they're sitting across your desk. There are some that come across your desk and you think, probably would, if I had a choice, I'd say no, but I never did that because our duty is to act for all and sundry, and that's what I did. That became a bit harder when you had kids and there was people charged with sexual offences that were a bit abhorrent. I found that pretty difficult initially, but then I realised I had to get a better mindset, and it's got to represent them the best way you can.
Irrespective of the charges.
Yep. Yep. Because if I was going to, it's one in, all in, or don't do it at all. So, and I did that. Did a lot of personal injuries. Well, when I went to Butler McDermott, I did a lot. I was a family lawyer, you name it. Mind you, after 18 years, I stopped doing family law. I didn't mind it, but it was the first I gave away too. So
I think as children, you grow up to a certain degree idolising the police and think that they're holier than thou. And I think a lot of adults still hold them quite highly in high regard. When did you see your position of importance to hold them to account?
I think it was more when I was doing law, when I started doing law, and also some cases that I was involved in. Some of them, the conduct of police were really, really, really poor or really bad. But maybe the world's not as clear as it should be. And sometimes in that era, and that was pre-Fitzgerald,
wow,
there was some stuff going on that you think, really, that can't be right.
Yeah, of course you're doing crime.
And if you get
pre-Fitzgerald.
And if you get enough of them who come in who aren't related to one another, you know, in the sense of they don't know one another, if they're all telling the same story about police officer A or police officer B, you think, they can't all be telling lies. So I learned a fair bit out of that, but also I learned a fair bit about the fact that there were some really good police, but there were some really lazy police, like shortcuts, we'll fix them, that sort of stuff. So I didn't really like that. So I thought, well, whenever I can, I'm going to take them on. And that's what we did. We took on things that I'm sure a lot of people would have said, you're crazy. But I'd do it again tomorrow if I had to take them on.
And so you moved to the coast. That's a fair risk.
Yeah, it was. It was an even bigger risk for my mum and dad. They mortgaged their house for the bank loan that I needed to buy into the partnership.
Wow.
They obviously trusted me, and I can tell you that I didn't have any moments where I didn't think I'd ever be able to pay it back, but the day I did pay it all back was a great day. And it was a great day for me to be able to say to Mum and Dad, well, thank you so much. And
do you know how long that took?
I don't remember off the top of my head, but it might have been 5 years, 6 years, 5 or 6. But they were never worried, but it's just, have your own inbuilt radar about, well, I was one of 9 children, so why should I get the mortgage? And there'll be others that probably also have needs. And not that they asked Mum and Dad, but I found that as a huge responsibility, and I was really, truly grateful for the opportunity they gave me because I had no money, I can tell you.
In those first few years, is it all up? for you in terms of the opportunity and the potential, or are there any doubts?
I don't know. Once I got into law
You got up there.
and once I got admitted, I knew that I wasn't going anywhere else. I'd loved what I did, and I loved to mix it with a few of them. There were some great wins. Pre-Fitzgerald, there were a few people I suspect might have got done and they shouldn't have got done. That was when, and Fitzgerald was really good in the sense it weeded out so much rubbish. And you sort of wonder whether, it's a generation and a half at least that since that, whether we need another one. Because the people who are now, or most of the people who are now policemen, weren't in Fitzgerald days. And sometimes old habits can come back or old new habits creep in.
You're known for the enormous amount of pro bono work you do, or you did.
Yep.
Where did that come from? Was that a Stafford and John?
They effectively let me run what I wanted to. But I think it comes from my family. Like Mum and Dad they were battlers and always wanted to make sure that you didn't have to be a rich person to get a fair go. I think the grounding comes from them.
Did you feel like there was an obligation on you?
Yeah, I did.
Yeah.
I think as lawyers we have an obligation to do it. Like, what a privileged position we're in. And we need to give back. And we need to help people who are very much deserving of help. It probably has got more in recent times, and when I say recent, the last 20 years. When I first started legal aid, we did legal aid for 18 years. The firm had done legal aid for years and years and years. We made the decision to give up doing legal aid, which was a financial reason, and we worked out the number of files that we had, some of which we were making losses on because of you can't do half a job. Nowadays, I think pro bono's really got some legs because legal aid can't fund everyone and its funding abilities are so much less. Like, legal aid used to fund actions that really were arguable, but by no means certain in the civil and criminal world.
Yeah, right.
And it bred really good law because we were able to have a go. Whereas now, unless you do it pro bono, you're going to go nowhere. And it is disturbing to see how many people are unrepresented or self-represented in courts. That's Supreme Court down. And the number of people that plead guilty now because it's easier. So they're things that we as lawyers should be really vigilant on because we're so lucky that we can do what we can do, but do we do enough for those that don't have a dollar? That's one of our problems. And I know that there's lots of pro bono firms around and there's pro bono. So they do a great job, but are there enough of us? Probably not.
You've got a really strong moral compass, but not necessarily just on a work level, but almost I get the sense that you know yourself really well.
Yeah, I think I do. I've bashed myself up a few times, but...
When has that happened?
When I think maybe I should have done something different, maybe I should have done better, maybe I should have seen that coming. But that's not very frequent, but there are times you reflect on, well, could we have done that better, or should we have done this? And fortunately that's not very often, but in everyone's life I'm sure we go through periods where we go, oh, maybe we should have done that instead of this, or run a particular argument a different way.
I feel like you if a problem arises in front of you, like, it almost feels like you know what the way forward is almost instantly. Or is that from the outside looking in, do you take time to consider and does it sit with you before you make a decision?
No. Sometimes I think that has come with the experiences that I've had. I can remember thinking in the first, say, 10 years of law, I think John and Stafford some days would have thought, what have we got here? There were people who did come in and complain about me to John or to Stafford, but mainly to John because he was a senior partner. And he'd say, yep, come in, and I'd sit there with him, and he'd let them have their say and talk. And
What was the complaint?
one was that I hadn't done enough on it, or I hadn't got back to him, or just some nutter that I had acted for. John taught me in that we need to let them have their say, and he then would talk to them in a very polite and proper way, and then he'd say, well, I'm sorry, we can't do any more for you, and they'd show them the door, and that'd be the end of it, or he'd say, no, we're not changing what we've done. And so I learned a lot from John. He was just a fantastic.
Yeah, what were the lessons?
One, he worked really hard. Stafford worked really hard.
What did that look like back then?
Well, he worked long hours. Before I got there, and some years before I got there, I think John and Stafford, they used to work 6.5 days a week because one of their partners died, and they were really busy. And so they also, you didn't stay around if you didn't work. But they had a really good name in town, and they were well respected for the work they've done, and they were good lawyers, but they were good people, more to the point. And John was just one of those.
Was he a family man too?
Yeah, I think, did he have 4 daughters or 5? But he lived in Asplin Street in Nambour, and he's just a wonderful man. He was a bloke that was fairly softly spoken, but very direct but considerate. Loved life, loved parties, loved all sorts of things. But he's one of the greatest people I've ever run into.
All right. The other thing I want to bring up is, and whether this has been honed over the years, but I told this story when I sat with Gabe that back of house, it would be a shit fight. There'd be files everywhere. Receptionists going, secretaries everywhere, you're saying, you're blowing up going, where's this, where's that, and you walk through boardroom doors, the clients there, and you have this incredible knack to be able to seemingly devote your entire life right at this moment. You're so present with the client.
I understand that. I think I was really lucky to be able to do that. Like I had truckloads of things going on in my mind, or I'd have things I had to get out that hadn't been typed or got done. And sure, I did blow up sometimes, and not infrequently, about where's that, why isn't it done? The client, it's their problem, and it's their issue. They're not here to have me carry on about my baggage. But I did love the clients. I could really take their issue and run with it. And I found that really fulfilling sometimes, lots of times actually. And back on pro bono, some of the greatest thrills I've ever had in life have been from pro bono. Just things that you could never expect, ever go into, and you think, look at that result, and you think, how did that happen?
Let's go down that path. And there's a lot, but certainly the most well-known is helping Bruce and Denise Morcombe.
But don't forget, when we started off, we didn't know where we were going to finish.
No, I appreciate that, which is your point.
Yeah. But...
So they came to you?
No, I met them at a PGA golf at Twin Waters, I think.
Palmer's.
I met them that day, and then they drove me home, actually. Tim Ryan introduced me to them. They were setting up their foundation or wanted to. And so
at what point, what period of time after Daniel went missing?
It was pretty soon. Wasn't long after. And then we were meeting in the Marucci Surf Club down in the bottom amongst the boats and whatever.
You were obviously, you were obviously well aware of the fact that their son went missing.
Oh, it was
so close to the office.
And we were shocked. We couldn't believe it. And I had kids at their age, so it was really spine chilling, I can tell you. We had a fight about using the word foundation. We had to go to Beatty to get that fixed. So we set that up, and we were trucking along, and there were times that there'd be a foundation meeting coming up, and you'd think, oh, I'm that bloody busy, I don't really... And you'd go there, and each time, without fail, when you'd leave there, you'd think, I feel so good that I've been here, and any of the concerns or things that might have been weighing on me, they meant nothing, because they were so positive and such good people, and always lived in hope, and always said, we just need to make sure no stone's left unturned or any. I'd often say to Bruce and Denise, why do you deal with some of those nutters, like some of the clairvoyants? And he said, well, you never know, might find something. And I'm sure the police didn't appreciate him sometimes talking to some of those people, but he didn't care. He said, I need to find out.
He was talking to everyone.
What happened to my son?
Mm.
So he did. I didn't necessarily know that they'd applied for an inquest, but they just sort of matter of fact mentioned, oh, we've got an inquest. And they said they were going to go along to the inquest.
And the purposes of the inquest?
To oversee to check what had been done, because the police kept saying to them, well, we've done everything. There's nothing that we've been over it. We've double checked it and all that sort of stuff.
The police had gone through a number of years scouring it, couldn't find a thing.
Or we wanted to check that they hadn't missed things.
Mm.
Anyway, I said, well, I don't think that's a good idea to just go there on your own. You'll get slaughtered by the juggernaut of the police system. So I said, I'll help you out. And went from there. Some time later, we had about 7,000 pages of statements. And
could you estimate how many hours
to
prepare and to attend?
Probably a month or more, maybe 2. I didn't really...
Hundreds.
Yeah, I didn't really keep them, but I can remember going on holidays to Fraser with my family, and I'd get up at some ungodly hour and read the statements and make notes and dictate them in my room, trying not to wake Mel up, and so that when the kids wake up, I'd stop and then we'd have the day together. And Bruce and Denise, they read every page too and every word. They were fantastic to work with and work alongside of.
And it's not, I can't imagine it's fun holiday reading in the sense
well, I'd done a lot of crime, but geez, some of these people were next level.
Mm.
And that was the first time I realised there are some people who don't deserve to have the liberty that we have every day, and probably permanently don't deserve to have that liberty. But before Morcombe, I would have probably marched in the street saying, done his time, let him out.
Mm-hmm. Interesting.
Not so sure now.
Interesting.
Mm.
But even to know that the police had, at that relevant time when he went missing, there was some 30 or 40 registered sex offenders in the area.
Yeah, that was staggering. But also, some of the persons of interest were despicable people. 3 pedophiles had come up and had to watch nippers train and see who they could ingratiate themselves into, and it was horrible, really horrible reading.
How do you personally separate yourself from that reality of life to then your kids waking up at Fraser? Or
I was lucky that I could close the door and close the office door, and most times I leave work at work.
Mm-hmm.
Odd times I probably didn't, but most times I did. And I was lucky to be able to do that. So, well, that's where that's finished.
Was that a conscious effort?
Not in the latter years. Maybe it was early that taught me that. But seeing your kids and that gives you different. You just works work, and they're your kids and they're your family. So I didn't really find that too hard actually. But out of Fitzgerald, I remember we did a trial in Brisbane for a policeman, and it went for 6 or 8 weeks. So I'd stay at the Gateway, and Melissa would come down. I think I had 2 kids then, and she might have been to come down midweek, and it was just, you look back at those days and you think, Jesus, how tough was that really? On her, not me. We did it pretty, and we didn't have any money either. We had a bloody truckload of kids and no money. It's always a good feeling. So not that money ever mattered really. Was the happiness that we all had as one another, and I was lucky that Melissa understood law and understood the work I had to do and the hours and some terrible things that, she had to put up with sometimes when people would suddenly get my home number and ring her and say nasty things.
Yeah, right.
Didn't happen too often, but happened 3 or 4 times, and one of them we got the police to investigate.
Mhm.
But some were disgruntled complainants that we'd wiped out in a trial.
Oh, yeah, okay.
But she bore that brunt. So it's they're nasty things there.
Yeah, you don't sign up for that.
No. So, but the Morcombes, they were so good to deal with, functional about where we're heading. And, we'd do our own notes, each one of us, and then we'd meet and say, what are we going to do with this witness? What do you got on him, or what do you want to do?
So the inquest, you were able to interview some of the people of interest.
Absolutely. Coppers didn't want us to.
Mm.
It's just disgraceful. Saying this is the biggest investigation. He said, well, how much longer do you want? And fortunately, the coroner allowed us to cross-examine 8 of them. One of them, I ultimately went to the police and said, if you don't charge him with perjury and attempts to prevent the course of justice and make a mockery of the whole system, he got an extra 8 years for his trouble, on top of what? But he's just a liar. And what he said about Daniel and his remains and seeing him being chopped up was
In front of
Brisbane
parents.
Denise.
Yeah.
So bad. Anyway, but fortunately the press respected Bruce and Denise, because that day we were going out at the lunch break and they didn't want to go, and I said, we need to get out of here and just get some fresh air. And I said, if the press come near you, then I'll just tell them it's not a good time. There would have been 20, 30 press. Not one of them moved because they'd been in court.
They'd been in court. Wow.
So that was a really telling day. But the best day was when we cross-examined the drug dealer's partner, because the police...
So this is Brett Cowan, who was ultimately found guilty.
Yeah, no, but we cross-examined...
it was his alibi.
Yeah.
So Brett, at the time, Cowan said that he was at his drug dealer's house.
Or bought drugs on the way home, because he was the only person who said he'd been past the scene and back past the scene that day, out of all the persons of interest. Police 2.5 years later go and see him and say, well, you drive by from that point to home you're missing about an hour. Wouldn't take you that long. So he came up with this story that he bought drugs off this particular woman.
Mm.
So we went and saw her and obviously gave her indemnity from prosecution. She said, look, maybe I did, but I can't remember the precise dates. And the police who interviewed her said the partner was scrambled to say he was not worth interviewing. And
I left it at that. So
we said to the coroner, he needs to come in. So they went and got a statement from him. He ended up being the best witness, saying, no, on Sundays, which it was, we used to go to the RSL, had a loyalty card, a membership card, played the pokies, used to have to swipe. And it was 7.5 years later, I think.
You pulled those records?
The police went and got the records.
And they were at the RSL?
No, they were held on some computerised section in...
No, sorry, but it turned out that they were at the drug dealer and his partner were at the RSL, not at home.
Absolutely.
Yeah, right.
So it was the end of the show. So an inquest adjourned. Undercover policeman sits on the plane with...
That witness, obviously the testimony of that witness, of the drug dealer's partner, wasn't made public. Because there's a chance that Peter Cowan's now aware that his alibi is...
No, I don't know that it was. I can't really remember, but mainly because we were ecstatic by what was found. And we didn't know that the police put an undercover cop on the plane next to him, but that's where it all started from. And obviously they did what they had to do after that. You just couldn't believe that happened. You just think, really? And here's poor old Bruce and Denise being told, we've done everything, we've reviewed it. And it was really interesting, we started off with police service just having the solicitor and representing them. They had some inspector in the back of the court, and he obviously saw that we were getting into them. So then next minute they bring counsel and the solicitor. And then the final version, they had QC, and
A junior
and a junior and a
and
solicitor.
a solicitor.
And here's poor old Bruce and Denise and myself. I think. Such a memorable thing.
Mm.
It's memorable because, not only because of the result, but because they were such good people.
Mm.
And they lived and breathed and like they knew everything, and they'd been really brave about what they'd been doing from the moment he left to then. It was life-changing in its own way. Certainly life-changing for them, but life-changing for me in the sense that it's something that you think, really? How did that happen? And how lucky am I that I was
Well, that's
part
what
of
you
it?
said at the start of this interview, that you feel lucky.
Yeah, I did. And, there's a lot of work in it, but what great joy. You can't buy it. As I said earlier, there's other inquests I've done that have been amazing.
Mm. Yeah,
And
they've all achieved the outcome desired by you.
well, yeah, they have. We've been able to make inquiries into a number of different things in the medical world, in the disappearance of people, the death of people. So they've been so interesting to just be involved in.
Mm.
Most of those people are really good people, that I ran into, and that's why it's a bit of a bad statement to say if you do crime, you're dealing with people who aren't necessarily very savoury, but lots of the criminals that I acted for or people charged with offences, they all had some really good decency about them, and some weren't as good as others, but can't all happen the same.
Mm. How do you reflect on the lessons you learnt from Bruce and Denise? Because, the interview they gave after the fact when, the admission from, the undercover admission from Cowan and his subsequent conviction, but probably more so that Daniel's remains were found. And so they're something they've been focused on for so many years, trying to find their son, is over. That job is finished, and then there's an element of grief, and now they're going on with the foundation.
I'm sure the foundation was a really good thing for them in the first place, because it hasn't been easy for them personally, but they've stuck at it, and what they've achieved with that foundation's unbelievable. They're the drivers. Let's make no bones about it. We might all be on the board with them, or we're on the board with them, but I can remember in the inquest, it was the early part of the inquest, there was a Day for Daniel walk, and I think I went, I didn't do the walk because I had to go to Brisbane, but I went to the start of the walk, and I heard Bruce interviewed, and he was asked, well, some of the stuff that's come out, what do you say about the police effort? And he was really kind, I suppose, more kind than I'd have ever been. I can remember driving to Brisbane, I rang him, I said, mate, I take my hat off to you. I don't know how you were so patient and kind with that interviewer, because if it was me, I'd have been giving him an absolute spray. One thing he did say to me is, as much as there might be some shortcomings, got to remember we're all on the same side.
Mm.
And I reflected on that, and I thought, what a bloody good statement. But what foresight when it's your child to be able to say, we're still on the same side.
Mm.
So that taught me a fair bit, and took me back a fair bit in terms of the way I should probably approach some things. They've been through the lot. I could go on for days about Bruce and Denise and what great jobs they've done and what great things they've done.
Let's change tack then. You and Melissa.
Yep.
You have 6 kids.
We do.
What other than the financial investment that they bestow on you, what has fatherhood taught you?
Well, there were a few things. Firstly, I don't think I'd have been able to achieve or work as well in law as I've been able to if I didn't have, firstly, Melissa backing me fully, but secondly, Melissa as a mother. There's nothing those kids could ever do or want for that she wasn't alive to. I made a point of trying to be at most of their events, functions, and she just was exceptional. So you think, how lucky am I?
As you progress through fatherhood, as well as obviously running the firm, did you have conversations with yourself or thoughts to yourself about trying to find that balance, or how did you manage through that?
I managed because we had a huge debt. So you had to get out of bed.
Yeah. Fair play.
But she just knew that we had to put our best foot forward and work hard, and hopefully the rewards will be there in the end.
What do you think the biggest lesson you've learnt the hard way in that 40-odd years, Peter?
Sometimes you trust people too much. I suspect you can be a bit too trusting sometimes. But I don't know that I'd change that. Probably your radar needs to be up a bit more sometimes.
Who would you reflect on as the most influential person in your life, other than Melissa?
She's chief, mate.
I accept that.
She's chief. I'm so lucky because my kids are just, when we get together, it's a wonderful time. And I don't know, I often reflect on John Butler, He's a great man, but just a great person, not as a lawyer. He's a great lawyer, but put that to one side. But as a person, he was just a great man.
What a mentor to have as well.
Oh, yeah. And
like the accountant had seen the books and made the decision that that's the best way financially.
Yeah.
But I'm sure he didn't know the type of mentor that you were signing up to.
No, he didn't know them from Barrow. But the firm did have a good name. I knew that, and I knew the type of work or the quality of work that I might only be filing or seeing an odd client here for them, but they had a pretty good name and they had a reasonable volume of work. And sometimes I think how green I was, and that old saying, I'd have probably gone through many front doors and probably could have gone around the side door and got the same result sometimes, but that's just my age and experience. And that's what I meant by John and Stafford. Sometimes I'm sure thought, what have we got here? Because I was for everybody going through the front door, and I perhaps should have put the foot down and gone through the back door.
All right. The question for you is, as I'm hearing these stories, you're 22 and you're looking at places to buy in. Then you become a partner of what is now the oldest law firm on the Sunshine Coast. You take on an inquest into examining the largest Queensland operation, the Queensland Police operation. It's almost like you've got an unlimited level of confidence in yourself that the job will get done and done well. Like you just seem to be able to back yourself.
I don't know that I'd put it that way. I always thought I had some views about some things and always wanted to have a go. Never wanted to take a backward step. But I liked the fact that I could do that. And I certainly could get the point of where we're heading and work out, well, this is where we want to go. And I think I'm lucky that I can do that as against too many trees and can't see the forest. Most times I could work out, well, I reckon this is a winner, so let's go. Or I think it's really arguable, let's go. And I hated pleading guilty. It was just hated. There were plenty of pleas that we did do, but if we had an arguable case, I'd say, let's run it. What the heck? What do we lose? We might lose a bit of credit, but if it's really arguable, we should run it.
How does the risk part in your brain operate then? Because you are in horses.
Oh, yeah.
And life's, everything that we do, whether it's having children, whether it's starting a business, whether it's owning a horse, whether it's tipping a race, it's a gamble. There's
it is.
Unknown factors.
Fortunately, I'm a better lawyer than gambler.
It keeps you in the black?
Yeah. As buddy, I tell everyone my horses are that slow, my binoculars are trained to the rear, not the front. But having said that, I think sometimes the fact that the easy way out is to just say, oh, we'll plead to that and get a different set of facts or reduce facts. And I didn't like doing that.
The safe option,
Yeah.
not you.
No, and I wouldn't run things that were ridiculous, but I'd run things that you'd think, I'd have to convince some council, look, we're going to run this.
Right.
And we did, and some used to say to me, oh, you're mad, or I didn't think we'd possibly win that. And we did. That wasn't always the case, but lots of times it was. And I suspect most of that was from my meeting the client and getting a feel for them, and then think, oh, I think I'll back this. Or this person seems to be telling things that are plausible, truthful, or give us an argument that in law, if it's accepted, we'll win.
Mm-hmm.
So I didn't give up too easily, I must say. And I hated doing deals.
But you'd rather roll the dice and lose?
I'd measure that in a way, but I'd tell the client, look, these are our options, A, B and C, and tell them as clear as I could and as simple as I could. And I'd leave it to them, but I'd say, look, I reckon you should run this, but that's your call. Can't remember any that I would ever say that was a shit decision. I can remember many that people thought, some council thought, he's crackers. And we got up. They were great days.
It seems you get frustrated, and it's a trait that I see in a lot of high-performing guests, where you get frustrated with people around you who aren't reaching their own potential, or not giving the work ethic that you think that they're able to give.
Yeah. I didn't like people who weren't prepared to put in. They have to work. They have to be. If they sit across the table from someone, say, I'm going to do this for you, they need to do it. Don't bullshit them. Just get on with it. So they didn't last long with me, anyone like that. And I don't make any apologies for that, because that's the way it has to be.
Do you find that same doctrine for your kids? In the sense that
yeah, I do.
The expectation's high.
Yeah, it's high, but perhaps it's not as. It's a bit more forgiving.
Oh, sure, it's not commercial.
Yeah, it's a bit more forgiving.
Yeah,
and they're lucky they got their mother some days, in the forgiving stakes. But yeah, no, they bring great joy. That's you can't like. Again, how lucky can you be? Got 6 healthy kids. It's priceless. And sure, they couple them a bit wild, but can't all be the same.
Some may even move to the city and knock on a door and start becoming a lawyer.
Well, yeah, I'd looked at that day, and I think I was on the 3rd day, and I thought, if I don't get a job out of this, what am I going to do? I thought, oh, maybe I'll have a go at being an accountant or something. I truly had no idea, but got a job.
Flying into a moment. Particularly that, and also I think the accountant's advice to go to Nambour.
Oh yeah, he was a really good guy.
Like, had he said stayed there or go the other place,
I'd have gone there.
You'd have been a Brisbane lawyer forever.
Yeah, and I'd have been on the Magic Mile every Friday night. So I was glad to get out of that. I'd started to get into that, where you go for drinks with all your mates.
Yeah.
I'm bloody glad I got out of that. And there were some great guys down there, but it was good up here.
What advice would you give to your younger self?
To younger self?
To your younger self.
Jesus.
You rock up. What advice would you give you at year 23 in Nambour?
Oh, I'd say you need to have a go. Don't stop.
Would you do anything different?
Not really. That's why I think I've been lucky.
I love that. I love how genuine belief of how lucky you are.
Well, I do.
The harder you work, the luckier you get, Peter.
Yeah, but you look at some of the things that have come my way, you think, how did that happen? And if you're a lawyer wanting to get your name out there, I couldn't have paid anyone to do the publicity that I got by doing Morcombe's. You think, I didn't go into it for that reason.
No. We didn't know the outcome either.
No.
Yeah.
But it is one thing that I'll live with forever. what a satisfaction it was to see that guy. You know, when I didn't go to the trial, he appealed to the Court of Appeal, but I went to the High Court Appeal with Bruce and Denise, and amazingly, you know, they adjourned for about 10 minutes to consider, came back in and dismissed the appeal. Like, I'm sure they felt for Bruce and Denise too, because they could have reserved it for months, as we know things happen. You know, I walked out with Bruce and Denise and they said, I'll never have to say his name again. He's finished. And it was a great day. You know, started here, not knowing we're going to be here. He's definitely finished. And he's done.
Yeah.
So, and he's one guy, should never get out. Never. So, hope the authorities never let him out.
Consider that. All right, before you go, and I really appreciate your time.
Oh, thank you.
We ask the guests 5 questions,
Oh,
which I've not prepared you for. Most guests I do. So here we go. You're in the stand. You're in the dock now. So, what does success mean to you?
Doing the best you can and making sure you've had a real go at it.
What does happiness mean to you?
My life now, and happiness is, couldn't ask for more with what I've got.
A book that you would recommend for us to read?
Can't tell you law books.
No, anything. I want law books. God.
No, I don't. I've only read cases normally.
I'm expecting this to be the TAB lift out.
Yeah. Well,
the form guide.
It is the form guide usually, but I read a story on a book on Bart Cummings at one stage. That was pretty interesting. But I don't read a lot away from what I did at work. And
4 guests, you can have some time to think. 4 guests that you'd invite to dinner. They could be living or dead, but they can't be friends or family.
I'd want to invite Norm Proven. I do know him, but not very well. He's dead now. He's a great footballer, but a great ambassador for life and league and life away from league. Jack Purtell. I did know him too, but he rode a couple of Melbourne Cup winners. But he was just a simple, good, honest person. Or it'd probably be someone else in sport. I really like sport, and I mean, if I had really had my choice, I'd invite Muhammad Ali.
There you go.
He's mind-blowing. And we're grown up. No backward steps in him.
Take on anyone.
Yeah.
And then finally, a guest, famous or not, that you would think would be good for us to interview.
You know, I think you should interview Lisa Rowe.
Oh, we've had her.
Oh, have you?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
She was a great chat.
Yeah. Like, she's lived and breathed wish list. You've met John Miller. He's the CEO of the Turf Club. He's really interesting, but you know who's really, like, he's a guy that's well-balanced, and the fellow that'd be really interesting away from anyone on the coast is the CEO of Racing Queensland. His name's Jason Scott.
Okay.
He's done, he is Ladbrokes, set up Ladbrokes in America. And
oh, wow.
he's now chief of Racing Queensland. He's a really interesting fellow.
Okay. Peter Boyce, thank you so much.
Thank you. I need to get out of here.
No more questions. That was another episode of the Success Times Happiness podcast. Next time you're up against the police, think about the show and let the person next to you know all about it. Until next time,